Hello, welcome.
Hey, everybody.
It's
Hey,
been a few weeks since we were live. It feels really good to be back.
Yeah. So let me do a quick intro for Gen City Labs and what we're doing here. Thank you all for coming. Uh, I'm Eric Arvai, head of strategy for Gen City Labs, and today we're talking with Luke from Brave Browser. We've got MK, our head of marketing. Gen City Labs is a creative technology studio. We've been around in one form or another for the better part of 15 plus years, doing augmented virtual reality, AI, and Web3 activations for big brands. Every other week, we host an awesome guest from the world of technology, the world of blockchain, AR, VR, AI, metaverse, a variety of subjects. And we are super lucky today to be joined by our friend Luke. So, Luke, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you would, sort of tell everybody about yourself, and then we'll kind of get into some Brave questions.
sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on too. I'm Luke Malks. I'm VP of Business Operations at Brave, and I work on our Brave and our basic attention token, kind of on the Web3 side. And I came to the company super early. I joined in 2016, back before GDPR, any of this privacy stuff really kind of hit the zeitgeist in a serious way. But yeah, and since I joined, I've been kind of working on bringing like new business lines to market, and as proofs of concept and like kind of MVPs, and then working on like scaling them up. And prior to coming to Brave, I worked in ad tech, kind of in the belly of the beast, for a company called OAO, where we were sitting between the major ad tech stacks and then the major media companies, and so kind of where all the sausage was made, and working on that side of it too. So what we've been challenged to do is kind of make all this work with the user first kind of model and privacy, and make new things.
So, full disclosure, personally, I've been a Brave user for many, many years. I have been a collector of BAT for a long, long time as well. So clearly I'm a fan. But for those that might not be quite as deep into this world as myself, what is the kind of philosophy behind Brave as a browser, and what is BAT for the audience?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And so what we're doing at Brave is pretty different from what was in the market, especially like when we first started out. Our founders, Brennan Ike, who kind of created JavaScript and was at Netscape, and then co-founded Mozilla Firefox back when kind of Internet Explorer was kind of a rough equivalent to what Google Chrome is now, right? Like it's a major. So he's good at bringing browsers to market, and making languages that people use every day, and power everything basically. But what we're doing here is fundamentally different in that we're a software company that puts the user's priorities first. And so everything from how we design the product to make product decisions to implementing the code has to be kind of open sourced, or has to be from the perspective of like, is this built with the user's interest in mind? Meaning like, if like, we're not a platform where you can't give data to an advertiser, but that data should be given by the user to the advertiser, kind of with their consent. And so one thing that we do at Brave, and kind of how we broke into the market, was we basically like integrated really good tracking protection, like in privacy tools, directly into the web browser. And we use Chromium, which is, open sourced Chrome version of the Chrome browser that we, harden and put a bunch of privacy protection on, and make it smoother, faster, et cetera. And so when you kind of do that, like, initially people think, okay, well, you're blocking things that I'm using to make money. And what we've been doing, especially with advertisers, saying like, look, like, and this is what got me drawn into Brave in the first place, was that, there were products in the market that would kind of try to serve an ad to somebody that was blocking ads on their browser, which is kind of going against that user's choice. But what stood out about Brave, especially early on, and even more so now, was that, we're looking to generate new models that work with privacy, like, because this is not like rocket science or even anything remotely close to it. Like, this should be something that should just be baked into the internet, but it's not. So we have to be an example. And I think part of the problem is that, ad tech and just the way that monetization works on the web, it didn't start in a bad place. It just got so big that it became the norm to basically have to collect user information just to make the stuff work. And so what we're trying to do is say, hey, look, like, we can implement this from the browser, have it do some pretty interesting things with how we can serve ads and do other business models, and do so in a way that protects that user's privacy. And then also, like, it doesn't have like dark patterns or, other things that, would kind of hoodwink a user into, like, giving up something without realizing it. And so very simply put, it's just like designing software from the user's perspective, because we're all users, and nobody really has taken a lead or a charge in doing that at a fundamental level. And so that's kind of what our DNA is, basically. But if you look at things, whether it's like Web3 or AI or security, privacy, all these things, like, user first is kind of this umbrella it all falls under. Like, if you're building a user first product, it should respect the user's privacy. It should give them choice and control and all these things. And from, the open source code of our browser to like how we position things in the market, like our CEO and myself will be on Twitter just fielding questions from users every day, because we block a lot of that analytic stuff that other companies have on hand. We have to connect with our users, right? Like, very, very often.
You have an active Reddit community too.
Yeah, we're on Reddit and Twitter and a lot of different channels, and we have a community.brave forum where people go, and people just volunteering to help, like, with feedback and things like that. So I mean, it's very much in our DNA to like connect with users and then build products that they want, because without them, like, for us, it's really awesome, because when I joined, people were like, who cares about advertising and privacy? And it was really something where it's like, well, the thesis will get proven out by people moving with their feet. And so, like, when we started, I think we had maybe like a couple thousand users, and now we're up to having over 60 million monthly active users. And it kind of makes a big statement where it's like, look, if you can make all these privacy features and other things like that accessible, easy to use, there's actually a lot of value adds that users get from those protections, where it's like, okay, I can go to a web page, it loads faster, I can do all these things that there's a lot of overhead that gets taken up by a lot of the things that are collecting users' information without them even knowing it, right? So, like, yeah, so there's that part of it. And then with the token, I think with that, we launched it in 2017, and it was kind of building on this model where, like, we had a problem of, like, if we're blocking all the tracking and the third-party tracking in the browser, because we're fine with first-party stuff. If you go to a site, the user expects that site needs to be able to measure how they're doing on their own. But we ran into a problem where, like, well, guys, like, we're blocking all the accounting, we're blocking everything that someone's using to figure out what's going on. So we need to have a metric there. And then our founder also wanted to kind of introduce a model of, like, well, the user's attention is valuable, right? Like, we should be giving a share of the revenue back to the user, because without them, none of this matters. And so what we did was, at the time, Ethereum was a big promising blockchain. There was like Ethereum and Bitcoin, and Ethereum actually lets you build applications on top of it. And so we said, okay, look, like, we have a problem around attribution and how to account for things. A publicly verifiable blockchain is a great way to account for things. If we can, build toward that, the technology will catch up eventually, and we can kind of merge these things together. Flash forward to 2023, and some of these things are actually happening now, which is great. But in the meantime, we've been able to get a lot of the proof out there in the market. And so I think with the token, we give users a 70% revenue share. Users that opt in to earn from their attention, we give them 70% revenue share on the ads that they view. For advertisers, though, we bill it deeper in the funnel so that we can avoid a lot of uncomfortable conversations around, like, look, you're gamifying attention and engagement and stuff like that. And it's like, well, we can bill you on qualified metrics that's like beyond that level, then you're paying for quality anyway, right? And so, like, it's kind of part of what we're trying to do in general, is just to raise the bar. Say, like, look, okay, MRC viewability metric is like 1 to 2 seconds of a thing in view half the time. Let's do a metric where we can measure if the active browser window in the foreground is active for 10 seconds consistently, and then fire an event. So there's no question, okay, this user had something in their face for that long. Like little things like that where it can kind of address some of the things that we are in a unique position here because we are not an incumbent. We're a new player, right? So we can make new rules and kind of like take things that were pain points in the existing system, say, like, look, here's what something looks like when we can really get creative with how we implement this. And then, the challenge is kind of like, okay, take that to a buyer that's used to buying things in existing markets. And that's kind of where we've had to work things out. But, we've been in the market for a while and grown the business quite a bit. So I know I went on a kind of a tangent there, but user first stuff and new ways of monetizing attention, basically.
That's awesome. I would almost love to pause and see if you could paint a picture for us of who the users are, the end users, who's really that target demographic that's prioritizing that privacy. And then who are the early adopters and brands that are placing emphasis on that? The ones who are using your marketing channels and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like if we look at like kind of the demographic makeup of Brave, it's about 75-25 males like to female and a lot of like tech savvy folks that are into sports, entertainment, music. I like to refer to it sometimes as kind of like that Joe Rogan Austin Exodus crowd from COVID times, where like, okay, everybody's leaving but that cohort of folks that are just friends and family CTOs, right? Like who's that person you go to when you want to talk to somebody about the new thing that's out there? Who's your friend that's giving you that recommendation? That's the person that's using Brave. Those are the people that have just adopted to us. And most of our growth was like friends and family and word of mouth. And I think, we 2x our growth 5 years in a row consistently, like based off of that, like off of, referrals and off of just word of mouth. And so I think that, we're continuing to kind of build out. We haven't really penetrated that market fully yet, even in 2023. But I think that gives us lots of room to continue going after that, but also like refining our message to get more women on board with this, because I think like so much of what we're doing is universal. Like the value adds are like totally, it doesn't matter. Like it's not specific to one, demographic or gender or set of circumstances. Right. But our challenge is like, how do you, in a company that's like 90+% engineering, right? Like how do you kind of communicate something effectively to that broader audience? And that's kind of where we are now, where it's like, okay, cool. Like get somebody in the product, they can feel the difference, right? Like amazing. But like getting them in the door is kind of the tricky thing. Can we fit something into a bite-sized, sound bite that doesn't include a bunch of hyphens? That's the challenge that we're at right now. But I think that like we're working on that. And so, yeah, like I think, if you think like 18 to 45-year-old males or like folks that are early adopters into tech, like that's kind of our bread and butter right now. When you look at, our advertising customer base during crypto, like the last bull market in crypto, like around COVID time to about a year or so ago, we were one of the few platforms that like welcomed blockchain based advertising on our platform. We vetted it heavily, et cetera. But like we wanted to make it a home for that, because at the time, a lot of these platforms were saying we won't advertise this stuff, and rightfully so. There were scams and things like that, and it's a new area. But we saw a huge number of Web3 companies advertising with us. We still do, and I think like if you're looking for like a Web3 audience, like we have one of the most Web3 savvy audiences out there, for partially because users that are viewing ads in Brave are a lot of them, their first brush into Web3 and crypto was by opting into ads and then earning crypto from their attention, right? So like we actually have like probably the biggest like use case in Web3 with the biggest adoption, like, tens of millions of people earning passively crypto. Like even now, I mean, like in the winter of things, like it's one of those cases I can go talk to my neighbors about and they, okay, I'm in a browser, I'm earning while I'm using the browser, I got it. Whereas you speak about other Web3 stuff and it's all just like, eyes are glazing over and people are like, what is this Rube Goldberg stuff you're talking about? Just bring me back to earth kind of thing. So I think we're leveraging that now a bit too into like, how can we make, take those learnings to get people in a few clicks to earning crypto? Like, how can we apply that to things like self-custody for Web3 and the wallet, like where things where, you really want to like if we're being serious about having a globally accessible network here to try and, make the world, make technology, make these things more accessible to people, like we need to have things like self-custody where a user, is responsible for their own things, but also that they're not getting shut off because they were born in the wrong place, right? Like these types of things are, we're navigating that now politically, like with the regulatory agencies and but in a whole bunch of other contexts, right? But I think like the way this stuff scales is by building functional, useful things that people want to use, and our challenge has always been to kind of communicate that and make it easy. And so that's kind of where we're at with that stuff now.
I feel like it's worth pausing for a second and
sure.
just like reiterating how BAT and the attention token, it feels so fundamentally revolutionary to me. This idea of you deserve something for your attention. I was trying to think of what the parallels are. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen it where they pay you to watch pilot episodes of TV. Like in certain like Vegas hotels and stuff, there'll be like a little station and they'll do like a screening of a show to get your reaction. And they'll pay you what, $15 for watching a half-hour sitcom before it airs. Really random example, but it's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head where they go, your time is worth something. I care about showing you this content. And this is how I'm going to directly make sure you're benefiting from it. Not just, it's going to give you more customized recommendations if you just let us stalk you for a while. I don't know.
No, yeah. And we got a lot of like, people tried to kind of relate it to like folks that are electing to give their data away and things like that. Like, there were a couple of projects like that. But with us, it means like, we have to have a platform where, okay, that people are going to try and game this thing, right? Because you're giving users rewards. Like it makes you kind of a target for like folks that want to game that system. So the challenge on us has been one around security and kind of, making sure that like the one that we're billing advertisers on stuff that's quality and that it's real people, like, and being able to do that in a way where you're also guaranteeing privacy for users is like very challenging, but it's something that we've, been at for years now. Right. Like, and I think that if we can connect this message larger, right, to a bigger audience, then it really becomes a revolutionary thing. We've seen it grow significantly. About 19% of our audience right now has enabled Brave Rewards so that they are, seeing every type of ad we serve and can go through the process of like linking an account to collect crypto through that. And we have a bunch of stuff coming where you can actually do that to self-custody wallets too, which opens up a whole bunch of other, earning opportunities for us. And so I think that, it's a great way to get in the door to kind of prove that concept out. Say, hey, look, yeah, your attention's valuable. You'll earn from it. Advertisers don't mind. Like as long as they're paying for quality and seeing the ROI on their side, which it has given us a really strong mandate to say, look, like, okay, I won't let you run all the third-party stuff in Brave, but because we're a browser, the browser knows everything. If we can prove to you that this is generating some end conversion event down the funnel that you end up seeing, like, who cares? Who needs all that extra junk, right? Like you've got like A to B, you can go tell your boss your campaign's converting. Great. Like, and you can have an opportunity to connect with that user directly, which I think, if you look at how the market's changed over time, first party data is really something that people have had to learn a lot about and kind of implement and get savvy to, especially now with like Google Chrome kind of getting on the train with blocking third party cookies and all this stuff. Yeah. With us, it's always been like, okay, well, I mean, the browser is just an amazing place to kind of put a smart ad server right directly in the user's browser. Like it's like having an autonomous car. Like Tesla does not drive you around. Your car takes you where you want to go. Like a browser is a lot like that, right? Where you if we can have something that knows all your data directly on the device, that doesn't leak your information, that can match ads to you based off of what you're doing in your browser, like you're getting a much better targeting set of things to target to, and you're going to have a more effective campaign that you're running for your brand. But really with us at this stage, it's like build that relationship with the users in Brave, because like this is where those people are moving with their feet too, right? Like, and this is how you can reach them.
So we've been working with a bunch of kind of let's call them native Web 2 brands, large recognizable global brands, and in some cases, we're going to be doing an augmented or virtual reality activation at an event. And we have this opportunity to kind of bundle some sort of Web3 activation with that. But there is still, and partly because of, news of FTX and the current market conditions,
Sure.
even though it's convoluted and oddly not really related to the ethos of blockchain, et cetera. How do you balance the sort of educational part of it, right? I mean, what is what do you say to a brand that is hesitant to kind of embrace, let's say running a campaign through Brave, blockchain tokens makes a lot of brands head spin, even though it's, there's a lot of, marketing now towards it. So yeah, curious how you guys handle that.
Yeah, I mean, with us, it's been a multi-pronged thing. Like one, we want to really know a lot about our audience in any way we can figure it out, so we can, convey who the advertiser wants to reach, right? But then also like breaking it down to ROI, breaking it down to like, look, like you can get in as an early adopter now with us and have that kind of lead mover advantage. We're not going anywhere. We're going to keep building. Like we're fanatical. Like we're going to keep building this thing out until, everybody's using it basically. Like, and we've proven that out in the market. But really, I mean, you can try and educate people all day. What works best is to like give them something to use. And the great thing about having a browser, I can go on a call with a prospect or whoever and open the browser, show them what we're talking about. And that's when the stuff clicks. When I can show them this or they can go download it. We'll be in meetings like where people are taking out their phone, installing the browser right during the meeting, right? Like, or I've done talks like that where all of a sudden I look out and people are kind of just, installing it on their phone. That does more talking than any pitch really. I mean, and I think like the nice thing about having a user first product and getting a lot of those, feedback from users is public, right? So people see that kind of feedback happening in the open, and it's refreshing for people. Like this is not a place where you're on hold for an hour to talk to a robot. Like you're actually talking with the people building a thing, and so people really feel connected to the product, especially when we can ship something that is something a user recommended. Like then people really feel connected to that. But with us, with the advertising platform, it's been a mix of like getting those first types of ad units to market. Like we have one that's a big flashy kind of billboard that shows up on the new tab page, every third new tab page in the browser. So everybody sees that. Then we have an ad unit. We had an ad unit you could opt into. That's like a notification. It's like a text-based format that shows up when it's relevant, right? But more recently, like last December, we introduced, because Brave has a search engine too, in addition to a browser. We're one of 3 independent search indexes in the West. Basically, there's like Google, Bing, and Brave. Everybody else is kind of using a skin on top of Google or Bing, which is fine. I mean, but like we have our own index, right? So like we started monetizing that with ads back in search ads. That these types of things are great because anytime we can introduce something that an advertiser or buyer is familiar with, everybody knows search ads. It's the most successful business on the web, right? Like so we can go and be like, look, like get you in the door here. We can also get you familiar with these other ad units. And then once they start to see it, because the way we designed all of this, they have a dashboard that looks very similar to what you see in Google, right? Like, the trick about all this is like, okay, the amount of user data that's collected is massive outside of, in traditional advertising. But realistically, a marketer is looking at aggregated data on a screen. They don't care about what every John or Marcia did. Like that's not relevant to them. They want to know how things are performing. And so that's what we really focused on when we're building this out, was like, look, like if we can prove the financial case, like for them to do it, then people will see people adopting the product. It'll work, and then these questions kind of go away. I mean, like when Facebook introduced advertising, right? Like it was something that was new to everybody, and eventually Facebook got so big that you had to do it. And so there's a mix of like getting early adopters in that are the right brand fit for our audience, which has been a big challenge. Like Maybelline is not going to probably do that great in a browser with 25% females. Like, I mean, maybe they'll do all right. Like, I don't know, but but probably not as good as like UFC or something where you've got like a super tech heavy segment that's just into that type of thing anyway. So
I'm just saying, you need to get the engagement ring market. Guys
we have like, I think
they've got money.
Swarovski's like advertising. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think we just need to, yeah, and we need to figure out the messaging a bit better on that front too, I think. And but it's something we're working on for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have a question from the audience here. I'll pin it up here. So curious how everyone sees Web3 integrating into browsers beyond revenue shares for ads. Will everyone be using a hot wallet when browsing, incorporating users' ENS domains, your social profiles into it? Like, what does the future of this look like? And I guess this is sort of a veiled way of asking a little bit of what are you guys building now for the next wave?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's a bunch of things that we have been doing. I mean, I think like to the point earlier about it being kind of like, oh, the news and bear market stuff, like we've gone through these before. And with us, it's always like a matter of just continuing to build, right? If we continue to build when things are cold, when things heat back up, you're tuned and you're ready to roll. Like, and so from a browser perspective, it's a lot more than just a token and giving people a reward with that. We have like every single Brave browser has a self-custody Web3 wallet built into it that can hook up to Ethereum or any EVM chain. It can hook up to Filecoin. It hooks up to a Solana. Like we have to be agnostic to like the different choices that people have, because these things are going to eventually kind of specialize out anyway and do very different things. And so like even Bitcoin, we're integrating that as well. But I think like we have that piece of it where it's like, okay, that signing and execution element where you've got, your crypto assets and you're doing things with them. The other stuff we have is like we integrate IPFS, which is this decentralized kind of file sharing and hosting protocol that's out there, so that folks can host their own content on nodes in a distributed way. And so we're doing stuff in that front too. But we have services like Brave Talk, which is like a Zoom competitor that we have in the browser, where anybody can kind of make a call through the browser to anybody else. But we have it so that you can actually use, if you're holding an NFT, you can like token gate access to calls. You can hand over moderation rights. You can kind of use these things as a new way to sign in that are more resilient, where like, okay, in a doomsday scenario where like Google gets even more restrictive over like who can access their service, or any other company, like your email, whatever, like, and this stuff all sounded very abstract until about a year ago, and stuff started to really kind of rubber meeting a road. And this became a thing that was just beyond the fringe, and folks are kind of getting concerned about. These services help it so that you're, as an independent user on the web, you have ways of accessing stuff. Like, and what we're doing is building in, okay, we don't care about the hype cycles and what's hot this second. We care about how we can turn these things into services that people are familiar with. But like once they're in it, they see the added value to what these things bring to them, because we believe in kind of the fundamentals of this technology, right? So like, okay, this NFT that you get at you see an ad campaign that has like some kind of an engagement quest attached to it, where it's like, go do a thing, go buy a can of Pepsi at a concert or something. Well, that NFT you get for redeeming that thing can also be something you can access a bunch of Coke events with in the future, or you can go meet a creator that you like, or go access something. Like, it gets you into a club, and it gets you access to things, and you can also hand that access to somebody else, right? Like, and that's another way of measuring that too. Like, if somebody gets something from your brand and then hands that off, or somebody buys that in a secondary market, I mean, that's proving brand value. Like, for that, the fact that your brand has demand enough for somebody else to want that thing. Like, and those are the challenges that we want to start to map out, and I think we can totally do that. And so that's an area where we're looking at, is like, how can we get beyond just earning a token for viewing an ad? How can we convert some of that into like either a discount on a purchase? How can we make things where you can kind of quantify engagement better, that and have it be something that you can turn into like a loyalty program with your brand? Like, and these are things that have been kicked around in the abstract, but we're actually at a time now where this technology is accessible. Like, we have Solana integrated into our wallet. We can go launch a campaign, and it costs less than 2 cents to transact like on that network. It's like feasible. Like Ethereum was like $150 in the last bear cycle to get an NFT. So like, these things are getting to, the unit economics are getting better in a way that opens the door for a lot of brands. I think, unfortunately, like with the last bull market, I think a lot of brands put their necks out there and got burned just by some of the fundamentals, right? Like people would go do something, you get a whole new wave of people in, and then the congestion on the network would mean that even when a person wanted to do something, they couldn't afford to do it. They were priced out of being able to do it. Well, that's gone now. Like, that's different. Like, even on Ethereum and some of these networks where it was expensive, there are lower cost options that are coming to market. And that's what gets me excited, is just that, like, the fact that these things are becoming much more accessible, easier to use, et cetera. But like certain things like NFTs, you don't even have to transact. You can just sign and it'll get dropped to you. So like you don't even have to basically, there's no upfront cost for some of these things either. And that's the stuff we're interested in getting brands involved with, because if we remove that barrier, if it's just as easy as claiming a QR code or something like that, like that's what people are familiar with. That's something that people can get behind. And our challenge has been like balancing that practical application for getting business through the door with just the nature and the state of kind of the crypto world, which is all over the place. Like, and so like you've got like these tribal things and everybody's kind of there, but to the same degree, like if they see somebody like a major brand participating, they get excited about that too, because it just means like, look, these wider markets are opening up to everybody. And it's something that the serious people in this space are really excited about. So I think if we can use these new pieces of technology as ways to distribute media, like through NFTs, where you have something where somebody can actually view a piece of content through an NFT, or they can access content, or they can, get it as a redemption, or they can, there's all these different applications for it. It's really versatile technology. These things can replace what third-party cookies were and more. Like these are things that are upgrades to technology that people just don't realize yet. And partly because we need to prove them out. Like this stuff is still pretty new, right? Like I think I couldn't stand here and say, hey, we can go make a bunch of things happen at 2 cents a transaction or less a year ago. It was just not feasible. And now it is. And so that's what I'm interested in doing. Like we're kicking off a merchant pilot program where, some of these networks are starting to like Visa and Shopify, and some of these guys are starting to play around like, okay, well, how can we do like peer-to-peer remittance or like do Web3 e-commerce? And so we're kicking off a pilot. Say, hey, like if you have a Shopify store and you have Web3 payments available, like we'll get you in there's no better flywheel for, getting numbers on the board than with our audience that's already familiar with crypto, because it's kind of like, you go and you show this to people that are just paying with credit cards. Who cares? Like, why would they do that? They don't understand what the value is of doing these things. They don't get it yet. You have to show it to them, and you have to prove by doing. Like, and there needs to be more of that, right?
A few month now, we had the Solana Foundation on actually
nice.
After their Shopify deal got set up, and really talking about Solana Pay and what that looks like. Like, I feel like a giant flag needs to get waved for marketers of like, now is the time to start paying attention. These things that sounded like technical jargon, I remember being at a conference in 2018 probably, and down the hallway from our conference was a blockchain conference. And I remember looking at it going, I have no interest in that. I don't know what that is. I'm going to just stay in my marketing corner or something, whatever the conference was. And I can't help but think, wow, I wish I understood some of these concepts sooner, but also it's not too late. And the tools that are getting built now are getting built with that jargonless model, or there's folks behind the scenes taking care of it so that a marketer can step in seamlessly and understand these transactional behaviors, these ownership behaviors, these loyalty, these access. There's so many things that they need to understand now, and you can't tune it out anymore.
Yeah. And that's one of the advantages. I mean, like what we're doing when we talk to like agencies, right, is like we're going in and saying, look, like you would normally, when there's new technology, your innovation team is going to go try a bunch of things, panels, all these different, established things. But like, there's no better arena to try these things out than our system. One, because like our ad platform is the only one that's running in the system. So like anything, you have a really clean starting base of folks that people are seeing ads in Brave because they want to see them. Like that is different, right? Like, but there are, like that new tab page banner, people can opt out of seeing that. Like, but over 90% of our users keep it on because we found the right balance of showing a commercial message to over 90% of our audience that doesn't make them want to turn it off. Like, and so I think like what we can do for a brand is like bring them in and say, look, like you want to get actual data about how these things perform. You want to learn about how privacy and advertising and Web3 and AI, because I mean, we have, our own AI chatbot we just put in the browser, like all these things. Like if you want to really like get actual data around this stuff from real people, there's no better fit. And we're global. Like, I mean, like only like 20% of our users are in the US. Like we're a really globally distributed company too. So like you can turn Brave kind of into your test bed for what you want to apply. And if you really want to figure out what messages work without a lot of the trickery that happens in ad tech, like there's no better place to figure that out. Like, okay, what message is working with lead users? Well, Brave is telling me that these messages are resonating. I can go apply that outside of Brave. Like that's what we're doing, things like that too, where we can actually start to look and say, okay, we have a search index. We know what people are organically searching for your brand with on our platform. We know that when we start running messages from your brand, we see that lift, right? Like we can start to see what messages start to resonate based on what people are searching for. And we do all this kind of without breaking any of our privacy promises because we built them all with that in mind, right? Like, so it's kind of a nice way for brands that are trying to kind of not get so eye glazed with just the jargon. Because the thing that's been really challenging about having a privacy product and why we kind of approach this from like user first perspective is because privacy doesn't mean the same thing for people depending on where they live. Like if you live in Europe, like privacy is very well defined. Like user privacy is regulated, well defined. It's codified. You can take people to court over it. In the US, privacy means whatever the big tech companies tell you it means. Like there's not that same kind of regular. And in different parts of the world, it means different things to different people. And so, you know, a lot of this is like, look, like how does this stuff actually perform? Can we bring this to earth and like run something, get some insights from it, get some value from folks that actually want to be a part of a system that converts, you know, great. Like, and then how can we turn that into like a better shopping experience? How can we turn that into a better transactional relationship? You can get as many emails from our users as you want when users are willing to give them to you. So like, give them a reason to give it to you. Like, you know, it's that simple. Like what we're trying to do here is mainly just like cut through the noise and reestablish that direct relationship between what your brand or product is and the people that are engaging and buying it. Like that's it. A lot of this, you know, there's a lot of technical stuff in between all this, but fundamentally that's what it is. And, you know, yeah, it kind of taking the acronym parade away from the whole, you know, advertising and marketing space and just bringing it back down to basics.
I love that was a great soundbite, and I'm sure it'll be restreamed shortly. But this idea that, you know, ownership is a fundamentally psychologically different experience than just being passively fed a bunch of stuff that means nothing to me. And when you said, you know, a Brave user engages with an ad because they want to, because they're getting something back for it, because they realize the value of the ownership of their own data, of their clicks, et cetera, et cetera. It's just quality over quantity. And it does feel like there's a shift toward that and away from this kind of, you know, passive experience, right? And, you know, I own my data. I own where my eyeballs look. I own where I click. I own what I type. And I'm going to get something back for it because it does have meaning and it does have value. And obviously, that's what drew me to Bat and to Brave. And I think, you know, to me, it's an easy sell to a marketer, you know, with a brand that wants to reach an audience that is actually receptive to what they are actually, you know, trying to sell. This is great.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this stuff is around timing too. Like, you know, we came in super early with all this stuff, but I think, you know, macro, you're seeing this went from like, okay, free money era where like everyone just like tripling down on growth spend and just like, you know, the excess was just everywhere, right? Like not just crypto, just in the macro sense too. But now folks are actually like having to watch their dollars more closely. And like, if we have a brand unit in our browser that comes with better metrics than what you're getting from Hulu or from, you know, some CTV placement that a user can't even engage with, why would you spend money there? Like, well, this is another place where you could start to at least play with getting some kind of a better feedback loop going on what your branded stuff is doing. And so our thing has been like, let's build something. Let's give any marketer a reason to work with us, because with us, it's a lot of scale issues as a startup. Like we have like 60 something million monthly active users, but like, you know, that's nothing compared to Google. Right. Like, and so we're always we're selling an ecosystem. We're selling kind of like a vision and we want marketers to be able to play in that space. And if we can make a product that's tuned to where awareness or demand, what am I trying to get here, right? Like a toggle switch for awareness, a toggle switch for demand, we can cook up the right mix to help you convert on that, like, and get some meaningful insights away. That's an area where we can kind of really take foothold in the market. And then as we grow, it just becomes more of a peer-to-peer environment against our competitors. But for now, it's like, what new stuff can we show a brand? What new things can we teach them about their customers? Because, a lot of these people might be buying stuff from them elsewhere, but but it really just like cuts a lot of that noise away and brings that quality over quantity that you're mentioning. And I think that so much of what's happening in the larger senses is turning in that direction now, that it is, I mean, like, we have Ford running, we have a bunch of other major brands running that don't have to spend with us, but like want to do or try it out, because like whether it's search or these branded things, like it's interesting, it's something new for them to do. And if they can see ROI from it, then of course they want to do it. Right. So the challenge has been around kind of like reforming a strategy that kind of works in that, and kind of getting away from we were pretty over indexed on the crypto and Web3 side, like just because at the time we only had so many slots to fill, and there was a ton of demand to fill with all of them with Web3 stuff. And so now it's like, okay, like back to basics. Like, let's just let's tell a better brand story. Everybody that was into crypto bought other stuff. Like, let's get those brands in here and tell them and show them what we can do.
Love it. Do you want to post up Mike Shaman's question?
Yes, we can do that. Mike Shaman is usually joining us on these panels. If you've tuned into past Gen City Labs live events, he's usually up here as host. He is under the weather, so he is adding his 2 cents via the chat. If cookies are dying, what is going to take their place?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think some of that we touched on a bit around like having new ways of segmenting, right? Like NFTs are a way that you can segment an audience and retarget to that audience. There are other pieces of technology too. There was another bit in one of the other questions around ENS domains and things like that. Like you can have people. There's some of the stuff happens in the NFT market where you sign up for a whitelist. It's just same thing as almost like registering with an email address. I think a lot of the way that you can see this evolving is, instead of having an email address, you can have somebody that registers their own crypto domain name as like Luke dot whatever, and that becomes my new email address, and that links to my wallet. I can have things sent to it. I can access stuff with it. I can use that as a way to retarget, like through our system. And we have some of that, but that's happening. There are other outfits too, like Spindle is a great company that's in the Web3 space that's trying to kind of connect the dots between Web2 and Web3 marketing and analytics. And so you're starting to see more emergence around how can we tie these. The cookie issue is the issue, right? But like as these people transact more in Web3 and in these other areas, like whether that's a Web3 token or whether that's a purchase transaction or an email address or whatever you need, like cookies are, I mean, they were useful, but like they're not everything. Like the ad industry is so over indexed on cookies that like people look at it like taking the heroin away. And realistically, it's like, dude, like cookies are not really that great for what you were using them for anyway. Like the how much stuff you can fake with a cookie. It's like there's so many things that like the reason why ad fraud's so bad is because these things are super easy to game, right? Like and so I think, if we look at these deeper funnel attributes, whether it's an email address or wallet or whatever, a transactional history, something of that nature, payment method, right? These things that require that higher barrier, like you were saying earlier, quality over quantity, right? Like if you can get a cohort of purchasing users, like, and then link that to their friends and family that are on a social graph, like you're in a better place than you are with something that's retargeting a user that they don't want to see anyway, like, or that they're blind to. I mean, that's one of the things that's been really interesting about trying to market a browser, because that's something that's weird to market to people anyway. It's like buying a car. Like, okay, like I only really want to buy a car if there's something really cool that I want, or my car is dead. Like, and a browser, people don't think about them. They're just there, right? Like, and so one thing that's interesting is like, okay, you go try Brave for a week and then go back to your other browser, and you just don't realize like how blind people are to the tug of war that's between commercial content and, publisher content on the web. Every page you go to, there's just like, you're fighting for like a little bit of pixels on there to show something to somebody, or like a recipe site, right? Like, and these little things, I mean, we're going to have to evolve away from them anyway. But the game is going to be more about quality and building actual relationships with people, because like that's a much richer relationship to have anyway. Like, and so if we can solve the problem of getting a funnel open, then like these other pieces are totally next step solvable deeper in the funnel. And I think that, you know, what you're seeing now is people aren't willing to spend unless they can, you know, justify it. And so you got to get out of this cookie mess anyway. Like the browser standards bodies are super slow to move on anything. And Chrome is finally like kind of getting on this horse of the third party stuff. They're in a different position though, right? Like they have to kind of fit a square peg in a round hole of like trying to make stuff that is not really privacy friendly, more privacy friendly. Whereas like us, we're like starting from scratch. So it's easier for us, but you know, they're getting some pretty novel ways of doing it. And hopefully that goes well for them. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. But I think regardless, this stuff's not just a fad. It's here. And the sooner you get involved with it, the sooner you can start to benefit from it, learn from it. It's the same thing with AI right now. It's like, if you're not like playing around with some of these, like, you know, chat GPTs, or we have one in the browser called Leo, where you can just, you know, ask it anything. If you're not starting to leverage these things now, you're going to be behind pretty fast. And the actual threat for these things is just the fact that these things might not be accessible to everyone because they're going to move things so quickly. So I think if you're proactive as a marketer, like you're going to want to try stuff out anyways. But like our challenge at Brave is to make that super easy for people and let them know about us. I think there's a problem too, where like we go and have meetings with agencies, they don't even know we exist yet. So like a lot of marketing problems on our side we got to fix, but that's all solvable problems too. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to touch on the mobile experience, because
Sure.
I feel like that's been the most frustrating thing for Web3 adoption.
Yeah.
This idea that, fine, when I'm multitasking at work, which I would never do, but have a browser open with a wallet and like want to degen and join a pre-mint link or whatever it is that I want to be doing on my browser, I can do it from my desktop seamlessly right now. And the second I find out something is minting and I'm away from my computer and on my phone, I just give up. I just go, that's a missed opportunity. There's no way my phone wants to do all of these things that Web3 is being built on. So how do you think that's going to be a continued barrier? Do you think that that's a barrier that's going to be completely resolved in the next 6 months? Is there demand for that being?
I mean, there's definitely demand for it. I think like usability of crypto has been the biggest thing that the entire space has failed to address in, you know, the 7 years I've been in the space, right? Like, and it's heartbreaking. But that said, I think like this last cycle where people started to adopt NFTs, like it really kickstarted like bringing, we need to get, people are starting to access this mobile first, mobile only, and we need to start addressing that. You kind of saw like a backwards approach though, because okay, well, I have a wallet app that then has like this DApp browser thing in it, and nobody knows what that means, whatever. So like one thing that, like I said earlier, every single Brave browser, desktop, mobile, iOS, Android, whatever, we ship that, batteries included, right? You have a wallet there. So the other thing we added in was DApp support. So like, you know, when you go to a website on desktop and it says connect your wallet, you know, if you try to do that on mobile, it's very disjointed. It tries to send you to another app, then you link it, then you hope it sends you back to where you started. You hope that it got all remembered in that journey. Web3 is part of the bigger web. Like that should be an experience through a web browser, right? Like, and so that's the difference between shipping a self-custody wallet versus like doing something outside or an extension or whatever. And so that's an area where like, I think I posted videos on Twitter about this, where it's like, look, like you can't do this on your other browser. Like you go in and you connect and you can mint directly without ever leaving the website that you're visiting, right? Like those are the things where we are like starting to see a lot more, especially with the NFT craze that happened last cycle, but like adding a DApp support piece, getting the NFT stuff working, making it so that that experience on mobile and desktop is like, there's parity there, like has been a really big priority for us, because we saw the same thing with like early days where we were growing, you know, numbers before we had any ad platform or anything, where it's like, look, like we're a browser that does everything an ad blocking extension does without having to deal with all that crap. It's just there, you know? And so like, that is a winning strategy for any product, is like, if you can make those friction steps go away, like it makes it easier. If I can go to a brand and say, look, like all you got to do is tell the user, like when they go to the page, it asks if they want to access it with their wallet. Like they can go access it with their wallet. They don't have to leave your site or leave that page and get down another ADD rabbit hole, and then get lost, right? Like, and so, yeah, I think that this is an area where the next 12 months, I mean, I see it every day. Like there's a cohort in crypto that is very focused on addressing that native crypto cohort where it's like, okay, more airdrops and other gimmicky things that aren't real engagement, right? Like, but then there's another cohort that's like, how do we get the next 100 million people into this thing? How do we like build products at scale that have these things? There's much more focus on like product market fit. You're seeing like PMF thrown around like in social media in a way that you hadn't ever before, which I'm grateful for. But like, these are areas where we have to become like more grown-ups about this stuff and, making this so that anybody can access it, that it's easy for people to use. That's how you're going to scale this stuff beyond. You're never going to leave the speculative circus if you don't build serious things that are easy for people to use. Like that's it. Like you can either keep us stuck in this FTX casino mess of a discussion, or you can actually build stuff that's usable. It's really that simple. And
speculative circus is my new favorite phrase. It's called the speculative circus, and it's going to be all the animals that have been in NFTs before. I think we're on to something.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that stuff too, but you got to connect it with people too, like in an easier way. And there's so much room to do this, right? Like especially in the developing world. I mean, I have friends that are in Argentina right now, and they're like, everywhere I go, you can use like Tron or USDC for things or USDT for things. It's just like those are areas where we're also looking at doing pilots too, because like you get numbers on the board, then it's real, and people can actually like dig in. So.
Yeah, love it. And so speaking of Argentina, you earlier on you had mentioned peer-to-peer remittance payments, and that's one of the things that got me early on into Bitcoin as a great use case. Just remittance payments back to so and so in some country, not having to go through Western Union, et cetera, et cetera. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think for US, non-Western countries, that's a huge thing. These sort of peer-to-peer payments. And the other thing I want to touch on, somewhat related, is this idea that like, this cohort you mentioned that's looking at the next 100 million users, making things easy for people to use. And my brain immediately goes to a self-custody wallet, right?
Right.
As a sort of like training wheels into this world, and talk a little bit about the wallet that comes with the browser and with the option to go self-custody. So
I'm going to start with the second bit first, because I think it relates to the first bit, because I've actually got a really interesting anecdote from the last cycle around this. So like that used to be my go-to. It was like, okay, previous cycle, go to Coinbase, just onboard with Coinbase. It's super easy. That's how you can buy it. Then I was walking you become, when you're in this mess, you become kind of a crypto consigliere to everybody in your friends and family, especially when they start hearing stuff. So I was in Arizona with my aunt and uncle-in-law that are retired and totally, set up, that wanted to start playing with crypto. And so I spent 3 hours with them trying to get them onto a Coinbase account so that they could only buy $50 a week. And I said, okay, well, I never even thought to ask you to try to buy it through our browser. Like, so I ran them through, we have on-ramps in our browser wallet that's self-custody. They understand writing something down and putting it in a safe. They do that all the time. Like they're the demographic that has a notepad next to their computer and writes stuff down all the time. So this stuff's not foreign for them, right? Like, but they were in and out in 15 minutes. And there are hurdles there, right? Like, but we're at a time now, I think, where a lot of that training wheel stuff, it's like, there's been so much of an adoption on this that their anti-fraud stuff has become so friction-based and restrictive to where it actually, in a lot of context, is actually almost easier to buy self-custody. So like, then the challenge becomes like, you have to really reinforce this point about like saving the seed or working on having a different way about that. And companies like Ledger are working on different approaches around that seed phrase, whether it's breaking it up and having it in different backup resources so you don't have to like care about it as much. But like, that's the design challenge for folks like us. It's like, if we can make that easier than buying on Coinbase, cool, we're good. We just need to put it in front of people and get them to use it and get people talking about it. I think that we're at that point where that's totally doable. And so our team's putting a lot of focus on that right now. How do you make that step easier? Because back to the first part of your question, you do that, you make that easy. If it's easier to do peer-to-peer remittance through our wallet than it is to use Venmo or whatever regional equivalent that is, without having to do all of that, your customer process and all that stuff. And this is a kind of a double-edged thing where, like, okay, so I give my aunt USDC or whatever, right? Like a stable coin in Argentina, like what good is that to her if you can't buy anything with it, right? So like that's where the merchant side comes in too, because if you can start to get merchant adoption, and that's where things like Solana Pay and there are a bunch of other services like this where they are making it so that POS systems are easy to use with this stuff, and it can use a stable coin that people can then, oh my gosh. That's a family show. But they're making it easy, right? Like, and so that's the other end of it, is like getting those two pieces done and getting that out there. But I think a browser is a great place to do that because everybody has a browser. Like that's something everybody's going to use. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna do a little bit of parenting for 1 second.
Not at all.
Sure. It wouldn't be a live stream without moments.
It would
like
not
this.
be a live.
That's why we go live.
I know. Yeah.
All right, we're back.
Is that a Brave T-shirt you're wearing? And also,
oh yes. They have
merch on their website.
Yeah,
what other browser has merch?
I'll send you guys a care package too.
I got my Brave sticker.
Oh, wait, you just made Koa's Christmas.
I got my bat sticker on my laptop. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say we only have a couple minutes left, and I'd love to leave with a couple of actionable pieces of advice for people. So, first of all, if you don't have Brave software on your computer yet, Brave browser, and I didn't realize how many sub products there were until I went to the wiki page and was completely blown away by all of the different sub products. But getting that browser set up and giving it a try, so launching that instead of your Chrome or Firefox or, God forbid, Microsoft Edge, giving it a try and testing out, checking out the attention token, because there is a world out there where you are paid to see ads. It is your choice and you are opting in, and the advertisers are showing you a sign of appreciation. Really, like there's a really interesting culture forming there that I get really excited about. What would be your next level advice? Like I gave the rookie advice to the people that are on my end of the spectrum, my network of people watching on LinkedIn and stuff who are real basic and just dipping a toe in the water. For those that have Brave now, what would your following advice be, and what action items should they be taking?
Yeah, I think, if you go to brave.com, get the browser, open it up. I think, we make it easy on that new tab page. You can opt into rewards right there. We have a sidebar. It has like our AI assistant, Leo, built in there. Our search engine is default in Brave. So you can try out Brave Search if you want, for search queries. And then we have other products too, VPN and Talk, and these other things are pretty easy to find in the browser. But the best way to see is to experience it, right? So if you give that stuff a shot, I host a podcast, The Brave Technologist. I think we're 5 episodes in or whatever. But we're talking a lot about AI and things like that there. But it's for users, and so if people want to tune into that, cool. And then I'm just Luke Mulks on Twitter too, and I'm always talking about this stuff all the time on Twitter. I'm not so much on LinkedIn, but sorry, but we do have an account on LinkedIn that's pretty active too. So I'd suggest you follow Brave Software on LinkedIn too, and keep up to speed on that stuff, because we're pretty active in the web standard space and privacy, and we're always kind of chattering away there. So, but yeah, just give the browser a shot. I think that's kind of the home base. Once you get there, then other things start to show up, and you can try them out.
That's awesome. Okay. I'll make sure that I link to the podcast and your Twitter in the comments and stuff so people can find you easily. I don't know what's happening with the stream today that's not showing our names. That's usually a key part in making it easy to track us down after. Sorry. Don't know. It's possessed.
It's a privacy episode, right?
Yes. It was completely appropriate. Yes. We planned it that way. not a technical issue on the producer's
Now
part
everybody
at
knows
all.
what my kid looks like, though. That's one thing I've been pretty good about, smiley facing.
Oh, no.
No, it's not a big deal at all. It's just funny.
Well, he's on LinkedIn early is really what we just
He is. It's not
early
that
for his
hard.
career. He's fine.
He's good.
Well, so thank you so much for joining us. Next week is Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, we'll be back. Ron Graham, who's a big name in the event industry, will be joining us. I'll be setting that up on LinkedIn shortly so people can set a reminder for that event. Really, it's going to be catering to our event and marketing folks, probably more than our Web3 audiences who tuned in today. And then we might get one more live stream in after that, and then it'll be the holidays. And then we'll be back in the new year. So definitely look forward to feedback from everyone, ideas of future guests. If you'd like to be a guest, if you think you have interesting things to share that the world should know about, like, come chat with us. We love hearing about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
On behalf of Gen City Labs, Luke, you're awesome. Love Brave, love Bat. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to everybody in the audience. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.